Hi, Nicole here with Group 14 or Chapter 14. We will be covering the persuasive speech. There are three kinds of persuasive speeches. First, there is the persuasive speech on questions of fact, the persuasive speech on questions of value, and the persuasive speech on questions of policy. The persuasive speeches on question of fact and value are generally organized the same way, which is in a topical organization, starting with a general purpose, followed by a specific purpose, the thesis statement, and the supporting points behind the thesis statement. In the speeches on question of policy, it may be organized a little bit differently depending on the goal that you're trying to obtain. You may want to use a cause and effect format or a compare and contrast. Persuasive speeches focus on listeners' attitudes, beliefs, values, and behaviors, and you'll want to accomplish one of the following three goals on your persuasive speech: strengthening or weakening attitudes, beliefs, or values, changing attitudes, beliefs, or values, or moving for action. You can always look at a persuasive speech on a continuum. So starting at one end with they strongly agree with what you're saying or strongly disagree with what you're saying, and where you fall in between those two extremes. The guidelines for persuasive speaking are focusing on your audience, asking for a reasonable amount of change, anticipating selective exposure, and most importantly, the motivating sequence. The motivating sequence is very important in a persuasive speech, and you'll want to cover 5 areas under the motivating sequence, which are attention. Get the attention of your audience. Show a need for change or a need for action. Satisfy the need for change or the need for action. Visualize what it would look like if your audience were to accept what you're saying and see what it would look like for them. And action. You want to create a move for action, potentially. Once you've established your thesis statement and you know which kind of a persuasive speech you want to write, you want to look for your supporting materials. There are several different kinds of supporting materials you can use, and they'll, of course, depend on what kind of speech you're using. There's the logical appeal, which uses specific reasoning with instances and generalizations, or causes and effects, or reasoning from signs or clues. If you use a logical appeal for a persuasive speech, make sure that you avoid the following fallacies. Don't attack the person instead of the issue. Don't use false authority or implied authority. Don't use numbers to appeal truths such as, so-and-so believes this, or as a group we all believe this, therefore it must be true. Avoid sliding down a slippery slope. For instance, one thing leads to another, and so on and so on. There's also the emotional appeal. One nice way of looking at the emotional appeal is by using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Gives good descriptions, and there's a nice chart on that in our book as well. Maslow's hierarchy of needs includes self-actualization needs, self-esteem of needs, belonging and loving needs, safety needs, and physiological needs. If you're another area that you can use is credibility of appeals. Are you believable in your speech? Show your knowledge and your competence when you're speaking, especially on your topic. How are you perceived by your audience? Think about your character. Stress fairness to your audience, and use your charisma. Are you pleasant and friendly? Can you demonstrate a positive attitude? If you're able to accomplish these things, you're going to be more receptive to your audience. Supporting materials in a cultural perspective is also another important thing to keep in mind when you're doing your supporting materials. This is one of the reasons why we cover cultural items throughout the semester, is because it's very important, especially in this particular area of the persuasive speech. There are 5 key dimensions of cultural relating to persuasive speeches. Excuse me. There's individual and collectivists cultures. In these cultures, you're going to want to emphasize on family, loyalty, national identity, and pride. There's high and low power distance cultures, and in these cultures, you'll want to refer to prominent people and what they believe. There are also high and low uncertainty avoidance cultures. These cultures value tradition and information from experts. You may want to even give specific resources of where they can find this or provide the specific expert. There's masculine and feminine cultures, which are motivated by achievement, adventure, and enjoyment. And high and low context cultures. They like detail and directness. When you're writing your persuasive speeches, really take a look at what culture you're speaking to, because you're not going to want to use the same information for one culture that you may want to use for another. You definitely want to target the specific culture you're speaking to and make sure you keep their sensitivity in mind. That's everything you need to know about a persuasive speech and how to create an effective one. Thank you.